We have in 2025 second, third generations, again, not all, so many closeted, secret, cult, ritual, ISIS-like families. I will call them ISIS-like, because I know they've got nothing to do with Islam. They behave differently. Outside on the streets, at work, they'll all be very polite and nice, but behind closed doors, I've heard it myself, white people are trash, white girls are sluts. I was sexually molested and my dad never knew about it because a lot of us grew up in the curry house network because my family come from the city of Sylhet. And in doing so, often we were sharing accommodation above the curry houses. And so I got sexually molested as a child. Sometimes they would even do things, right, and have me on their laps. And my dad would be in the same room, but it wouldn't be obvious because there would be a table separating us. My name's Yasmin Choudhury. I'm the Yasmin in Justice for Yasmin. I'm a British Muslim woman. I'm a single mother. I'm 54. I was born and bred in London. And I'm here to talk about how I, myself, escaped what I'm calling is a cult, as I was raised in a very strict Orthodox British Muslim family. And how, when you speak up about toxic people from the Muslim community, because not all are like that. I myself am proud to be Muslim. I love Islam. But what happens, because I do believe there is a very different treatment when you start talking about bad things happening by people within communities like mine, and the reprisals and what's happened to me and my daughter. It's really frightening, and my heart is also going out because there's so many of us who don't believe what happened to the little girls up and down her land being raped by men identifying themselves as Muslims. It's wrong, it's disgusting, and I wanted to come forward and tell you what goes on behind closed doors and what happens. But why do men identifying as Muslims in towns like Rotherham, Telford, why do they pick on white girls? And while I'm not an expert, all I can do is give you my point of view. It's because they don't see them as human beings. They actually dehumanize them. I myself had a verbal altercation, with someone locally who has a shop. He's a Muslim man, and I used to buy fashion from his shop. But his background is Bangladeshi, and he told me that he dated white girls. But I think he thought that I was someone like him, because when he started saying, oh, but white girls are dirty, Yasmin, they're sluts. And I immediately said, shut up, how dare you? I said it was good enough for you to date them, because he was telling me he would never let or allow his son to date a white girl. And it's people like that. I promise you, they are the minority, but they do exist. They happen to think they are better, that somehow, because of their culture, their religion, they happen to think that white girls don't deserve the same level of respect. So when you have these men who mobilize themselves into gangs, yeah, you got to understand the psyche is so poor, is so disgusting, that first and foremost, rapists will rape. And rapists come from all backgrounds and ethnicities. But what's singularly, the dynamic of all of this is how a bunch of often Muslim men, because Islam doesn't allow, shouldn't be allowing, and Muslims don't believe that, women should be raped, because I certainly don't, would mobilize themselves and attack and be predators seeking and snatching white girls to be there, and these are children, sex slaves, yeah? But that's because right at the nub of it, they need to rape, but they need to do it in a depraved way, because they can't perhaps do as much in their own communities. And the fact that the parliamentary inquiry was rejected on the 8th of January 2025 by the Labour government, whose history, the annals of history, show them to be standing up for the deprived, the disadvantaged, the poorest. The way they've treated white working class girls is an abomination. It breaks my heart. It's gone mad. I think lunatics are running the asylum. I now am going to say, for every man who identifies himself as a Muslim, who may have come from a Pakistani or Bangladeshi heritage, please go looking into their family homes, because the wives, sisters, daughters, cousins, the females in that family might be able to tell you of the monsters they lived with. And it is my belief, because if I could be myself a victim of attempted rape at the age of 49 as a mother, and this was done to me by a man who is a male relative, what do you think these same men were doing in the towns of Telford, Rotherham, etc., to their own Muslim relatives? I think many were raped, and I wonder if some of these Muslim girls have the courage to come forward. But how can they? Because who's going to help them? Look at what's happened to me. I'm 50 plus, and I'm still living with the reprisals of having reported me, who's a CEO, who's a businesswoman, who's been educated, who, has had her own independent economic wealth. I can't even cope. What hope would there be for a little girl who's at the mercy of her rapist Muslim relative? But again, the caveat is not all Muslims are rapists. It's a small minority. And as a Muslim, as a British Muslim woman, I'm coming forward to tell you of some of the things that you won't get to hear about because people are too frightened. Many Muslims are too frightened to come forward and reveal it. So growing up, I wouldn't often have access to English white people except at maybe school. And I always remember my school teachers were very lovely. But often I'd be told to, in my community, to avoid black people, because there's a lot of racism towards dark-skinned or black people. But also that white culture I was taught it was dirty, that the women were sluts. They would use the word khabis, that means dirty, to denigrate them. And that's what I was brainwashed into believing until I managed to know otherwise. There was an attempt to rape me by my male cousin. And then he sexually assaulted me. And then when I tried to report it, which I eventually did, because I was so scared, because I was told I'd be killed. It took me 2 years. COVID happened. And then I went to report it in July 2022. And then you should see what happened to me, because that's why I'm so triggered. I know it's not about me, but seeing the little white girls who were raped, I believe them. I know what such ugly men are capable of. They have no place in the Muslim community, and nobody really takes much action, because in July 2022, when I reported it, I faced violence. I was beaten up. I went to so many people, powerful, privileged, people in power, asking them for their help, be it politicians, charities, police, influencers, campaigners. I've done nothing but write, begging for help. But they don't want to help me. Do you know why I think that is? I think some of them, maybe all of them, they're either scared or they do rely, especially politicians, on the Muslim vote. Because I just don't understand why they don't want to help someone like me. I can't understand how is it when I've played evidence, audio clip of me being beaten up by a Muslim relative, police did nothing and ended up letting me and my child, who was a minor at the time, becoming homeless. They did nothing. Why do they get treated differently? I've seen it myself, where I've said that I was called in to police stations twice in my life on the behest of a Muslim relative who'd reported me, even though I'd already reported that same Muslim relative to the police for being violent towards me. The Met Police dropped everything and helped them and listened to them and had me interviewed in a police station. Why is there one law for such relatives of mine and another law for someone like me? I think they're scared because maybe they'll face reprisals or they get accused of racism. I think, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a threat of death. I think it's that, oh, you're being racist. I think that's what people are scared of. Oh, being deemed racist or Islamophobic. Because I can't think why else it is, because what else could it be? I often sit here as a woman who loves Islam and think, we don't see the British Chinese or maybe even the British Thai or even maybe other ethnic communities, the black community to some extent, they don't, like why is it that Muslim rape gangs, because I've seen the evidence, how have they been able to get away with it under the eyes of so many people with power and privilege locally? What do they have? Or is it, here's another theory I've just thought of, are they themselves complicit in these crimes? Do they themselves benefit from supporting toxic pockets of communities who are undertaking criminal behaviour, yet identifying as Muslim? And why isn't it? Because there's so many good Muslims. I often wonder, have the mosques spoken out? Why haven't they done more? Because I started to wake up and realise how I was treated and how, for example, my Muslim male relatives were treated. I started to do my own research on Islam and realising there was a disconnect and a disparity between what they taught me and what actually Islam does do, which is to protect women, for example, giving us an inheritance right. Ever since that day, I've been told, we will kill you, you don't get to live, and you need to shut up, and you do not get to spread what you're spreading. Because obviously I would go around trying to educate others in my community or challenge it or speak up or try and expose my family through other relatives. Soon I would find that every door I knocked on, it would be slammed on my face and people would ghost me or slander me. And today, the general consensus is that Yasmin Choudhury is mad, she doesn't have a husband, she's crazy, she's wild, she's not married, she's a prostitute, and that's why you shouldn't listen to her. That's what they do, and that's why I believe it was so important to do this interview, because not many British Muslim women, certainly over the age that I'm at, because we do have that longevity of experience, are coming forward to tell you what goes on behind closed doors and why such families need to be exposed. They need to face justice. But you know what? I don't think they will, because they're still walking around. No one's catching them. No one's going to lift a finger against them. I know this because I've got evidence. Either I will pay for it with the price of my life, or maybe even my daughter who I'm trying to protect, or I will die. But I've always maintained that I will either try or die. Because my question now is, who's responsible? Politicians, charities. I blame the Muslim establishment. Oh yes, the Muslim Council of Britain know about me. I've been to several. There are also some good people, and I want to give a shout out, like for example, when I called up Lewisham Mosque this year, they were really kind when they heard my story. They said, on the end of the phone, there was a lovely gentleman. He said, sister, come in and we'll talk to you. But sometimes you're so scared for your life because you have to understand, I was beaten up by a mob. I've had a cigarette thrown in my face. I've had everything being done to prevent me from speaking about my own experience as a victim of attempted rape at the hands of a Muslim man who's supported by my own community.